In the name of God, I hope you have enjoyed our exhibition till now. In this panel, we're going to talk about the human resources importance in the semiconductor industry. But before that, I would like to ask our honorable guests here to introduce themselves, and then I will be giving more explanations and ask a few questions. Thank you. I'm Mohammad Reza Bagheri, manager of the project HRA. In the name of God, I'm Mariam Gulshan. I have PhD in entrepreneurship, business management, and a postdoctoral of market management. At your service. Hello everyone, I'm Sadegh, instructor at Iran University of Science and Technology, and we work on MEMS devices. Name of God, I'm Mehran Moallem. Well, watching all of you so young sitting in front of me, I feel embarrassed telling you about my age. I took my PhD in 1989 in America, which means it's 37 years from then. But I have taught in Berkeley University for a time, and I was a technical director of American chip manufacturing company for a time, and now I'm here. Well, we are honored to be in your presence. As for why are we talking about semiconductors in the AI exhibition, one of the deepest layers of AI is semiconductors. When we're talking about automation, this industry is very important. The semiconductor industry has been fairly new in Iran, but last few years has been more active, making sensors and various chips. One of the challenges of this industry is attracting human resources, since it acquires high levels of knowledge and understanding. Today we want to discuss the human resources problem in this industry, in the semiconductor industry. And another issue we want to discuss is how can we use AI as an assistant to the human resources, and how can we introduce this new concept to the industry. Before that, I would like to ask Mr. Sadegh to tell us how important human resources is in this industry, and please explain a little about this industry as well. Thank you very much for the raising of the topic. First, I should mention in the beginning of my speech that, as you said, the topic of this exhibition is Internet of Things and AI. And what this relates to our panel is that when things have internet for themselves, the future would be something like this. Our pen could link to our house keys. And, well, this seems exaggerated, but naturally, Internet of Things uses sensors. And with a little simple math, we would realize we need a huge amount of sensors to be able to do that. Just as the last panel explained, the AI usage in robotics is only systematic in our country. We don't work on how the AI works. with the robots. We just buy it, and if we buy all these robots and all these sensors, we would become consumers. The problem is, if you're trying to develop a technology, if you, for instance, want to develop a car, and you can't even make a simple tire, you are not a developer, you're only a consumer. So the sensors issue is very important, and we usually warn the government that this issue can lead to future problems. But when we're talking about Iran or other countries that are in a way behind modern world industry, which I'm not going to go into the details of why, but what we should be doing is to look ahead and plan ahead in order to reduce these problems. We can't really omit them, but we can reduce them. One of these issues is human resources. Some people say that equipment is the most important thing, but I'm not saying that's wrong, but what we are really missing in this country is changing the plans and working on the human resources part. If we want to develop these industry in a cluster-like manner, the same failure that I've just mentioned would happen again. In our university, when I look at the students, they are forced to come and work with us because they have to attend the university. But this process goes on till they graduate, and then they apply somewhere else and they leave the country. I have the statistics that usually in this field of study, 60 or 70% of the students leave the country. It's quite understandable because they can't really work in a tangible working space. Well, some of it is economy and equipment and the lack of them. But another part is elasticity. Very well. Thank you. Miss, you said you studied entrepreneurship. My question is, if we want to use the ecosystem for attracting the human resources, and if we can, how we can do this? I would like to add something first. I would like to add something to the previous speech. When AI is entered into the semiconductor industry, one of the things that we need to really be careful with is that the human resources are the foundation of the work in that industry, and their worth becomes even more. And what you can do with them is that turn them from technicians to analysts. What I'm trying to say is that AI by itself can't do anything, but if we somehow can gather quality data from AI to reach us to where we want to go, this is very sensitive. If it has any, even little errors, the result might be catastrophic. If AI wants to enter this industry in any way, and the entrepreneurship is not done by the human resources, the actual humans, I don't think it will be very useful. Well, you made your point, but I will ask you again later. Mr. Sadegzadeh, I would like to ask you that can we or should we train the human resources by using AI? First answer this. Can we do that and trust the process? And then how? The cons and pros. Would you please talk about that a bit? Yes, well, hello again. The data that we gather from either the company or a project or any other actions, this would become our knowledge source, our go-to source that we can teach the human resources with these. And what you asked, I want to say that, well, you can train the human resources based on the existing data of the companies and also the data that is already on the internet, and we can use all of this to train the new human resources. Okay, thank you. I will get back to you too. Mr. Sadegzadeh, based on your experience as a instructor in the university and working with the students, can you tell me what should we do to train better human resources and outlets from the universities? I mean, I'm talking about the ministry and the higher-ups. What should they do to help the university do that and help the industry? Well, thank you. I believe there has been a lot of trials and errors doing this in our country. It has been since the 90s. In its own time, these efforts were helpful in a way, but what it did was make the infrastructure needed. And these infrastructures only worked as educational centers, and I'll tell you later why. All they could make was a few prototypes, and well, other institutes such as the military had its own needs, and we did work in those as well. But a more civil use that we could work on was very much left by itself, and the output of the university was very low for civil usage. One of these such prototypes was Mr. Sadegzadeh's. He tried to design and manufacture a sensor. Could only manage to give 20 sensors from thousands. That didn't work. But still, it wasn't usable because our market didn't allow it because of the low quality. It didn't even match the Chinese quality. The result was only that he became a taught in the university, and later the students even entered other fields such as electronic and mechanic distribution. What is obvious is that we can't be moving this way forever. And it's pretty cliche and it's boring, but what we need to do is linking the industry to the university. But there's no other way, everyone knows that. we have experienced, I mean, I'm not talking about myself, but our professors that worked on these, all of them have experienced that the traditional models that are pretty normal and not really useful in this industry aren't really worth trying to teach and then enter the industry. Let me explain a little more about this industry. Think that you're in America and you designed the computer chip. Even in America, you won't be using a nearby workshop to mass produce it. Everywhere around the world, these things happen when you take orders. It's the same with books. When you're trying to copy a book, if the off-print is low, then the printing line won't be accepting your job because it won't be economic. In MEMS devices, it's the same. How such small devices are economic? It's because the circulation is high. For instance, if you're making airbags for cars, and you want to add accelerometer to the airbag, and if you want, for example, 1,600,000 accelerator sensors, the circulation will never be economic this way. In Iran, at least till now, we didn't have access to the global market. And even if we do, it won't be easy to work with this market. So we will always have issues. So what we need to do is outsource the circulation in Taiwan, Ukraine, and other countries can do it for us. Have you heard of Dunning-Kruger's code? It says that when you're entering the new field, when you know the surface of it, you think you're the god in that field. We have the same issue with our students, especially the young ones. When we talk to them a bit about what the whole idea of the industry is, they think they know everything. In the whole society, this happens too. I mean, like the MEM devices collaborating group, and when they enter the field a bit, they think they're the owners of this industry. I have the same issues with my students. The human resources system works the same. When we take our students to make their first sensors, they lose all of their confidence and they drop the whole project. Based on psychology, you need to keep going forward. You know that you know nothing. You're behind from the rest of the world. What you need to do is move from this minimum and go up to where we have enough knowledge. And this takes a lot of effort and a lot of budget. We talk in theories and people get excited, and when we take them to the lab to help them actually create the devices, we will be ruining chips after chips and devices, and in a week you might even lose 200 million tomans. This argues that if we want to keep the human resources in the country and give them the confidence to stay in this path, it's very expensive. I can convince you, all of you, to become scholars in this field, but tomorrow morning you all will be giving up because it's a very hard and long journey, and a lot of expenses need to be put to help you all learn it. But this is wrong. We have to have a super focused group, like focus our energy and resources on only 100 people, and you would get 20s at least human resources from those. Thank you very much. As the doctor said, this field is very expensive. Miss, based on what we heard about how expensive this field is, and well, you work on innovation and developing production. So what I want to ask is, how about we try outsourcing or cooperation deals? I'm sure you all know that our country doesn't have a stable economy. So what do you think we should do for our industry to trust these startups and give them, use them as an outsource? In this industry and other industries, there's always the handling the human resources and the other expenses. What do you think we can do to stabilize this part of industry? Based on my experience in my company, when I'm asked by my students what should we do, we're just operators in our own country and everything will be exported from abroad and the investments will be put on their companies. But this is very sad. With the innovations we have in the Iran-Kesh company, my colleagues have done things that I am very proud of, and I want to bring these results to my students and show them that they're wrong. My colleagues do a bit of R&D and they work for long hours, and the data they gather with high quality data, not the amount of it doesn't matter. And the work they go through takes a lot of time to make the idea turn into production. Last week we had 2 of our ideas that turned into a production, and all of these process will be done in our own company. It's never been done before in the country, and in the abroad it's still being studied on. So what I'm trying to get at is if we can keep the human resources and teach them well and give them specialized education, so we can use our human resources as a specialist, as an analysis, not an operator. We will be successful. 70% chance of success exists. So if we ask for knowledge instead of material from abroad, we can share our human resources in our production. So we are investing on our own human resources. Okay. And now I'm going to ask you, how can we use large language models as a research tool to human resources? What sort of a help it can do? Or the data that you mentioned, can you explain what it means in this industry? And the differences between the models, as in if I use ChatGPT or DeepSeek or other large language models, and tell us where we can use these. For instance, in recruitment, can we not reject a person and teach them with AI instead? Those are my questions, since you are a project manager yourself. Right. Before I want to answer your question, I'm going to make a quick point. The large language models that we're using right now, ChatGPT, DeepSeek, and others, are trained on a huge amount of data, and the IPs and the sources that these models have been trained on are so different that if we want to ask technical questions from it, it has already crawled through all the data, and the answers might not be a right one for us. And now back to your second question. The data that we gather from a company or an organization, and we gather them as a source. If it's on Word or PDF or file, this can be used as data to train the human resources that come as in a new recruit to the company. I'm talking about after recruiting. They probably have basic knowledge of that field from the student years in the university, and they haven't entered the field of work yet. If we want to make this person be ready to become an human resource, now AI can come into picture. Take, for example, if you are an expert in this field and you want to train human resources, and you know the data that these people need to either read part of it or ask questions from that data and knowledge. Now, if we train that AI to answer questions based on the source that we gave it. So if the intern asks any question, it will learn from the data that is safe, that the source was chosen by an expert, and you don't have to look into the process yourself. Another thing that we can use is analysis. The AI can analyze the whole text and give a summary to the intern, and this would be more than enough for that person. And the third solution is that instead of Q&A, we're going to give an answer the question or a pop quiz from that intern. After the two last process has been done, AI will ask a few questions based on the data that we gave it, and the intern will write down the answers. It could be 4 options kind of question, or true and false, and others. And now we can assess the knowledge of the intern ourselves. So what you're saying is that we can train human resources. Let me make an example. I don't know if your model is ready to be shown here right now, but based on this, sometimes in the interviews, human resources in this industry that is fairly young in our country, and we didn't have anything like it before, just like Mr. Sadaqzadeh said. And at this depth, we don't have an enough level of knowledge. It's either 20 or 30%. Their whole knowledge is just theoretical and limited kind of knowledge, not very helpful in the industry. So we need to train them. And the model we are going to train them based on is driven by AI. So we can train people in 30 or 40 days, and we can reach their level to a acceptable level to accept them into your crew. But today we are in the presence of Mr. Muallim. He hasn't introduced himself well. He has 16 years of teaching in Bakery University, 26 years of working in the cheap manufacturing in America. We've heard about AMD and Intel and others, but we haven't heard about the companies that design the machines that help Intel become Intel. That level of experience is what he has. More than 400 papers and 26 patents in America, Europe, and Japan. And 32 of these patents could be on your phone in your pocket right now. And based on their experiences in this field, we will be grateful if he answers our questions. Tell us about the experiences you had working for big companies and working with the Human Resources Department from their side point of view. Thank you from you and our patient audience as well. I hope that this would be a start of a movement. It's good that I can share how wonderful it is to see that you've solved something, you invented something, and you're seeing the results yourself. The cell phones that you have right now has something between 23 to 40 chips in it. And I promise you, 50% of these were made by a machine that I have the honor of making. There's no joy sweeter than this, and I wish this joy on you. The ones sitting in front of me, you are the ones who have the future in your hands. It's not magic. Any country that is successful is doing it. Other speakers alongside me have mentioned as well. This is done in 3 levels. One is management, the other is university, and the third one is you, students. I start with you because that's where it begins. The most important point that I need to make is that you need to comprehend knowledge on a deeper level. When you're answering a question in your university, you have to understand where exactly in the nature this question is important. When a semiconductor works in a specific way, we need to be able to explain how this works in molecular level. And if we learn this way, we will be successful in university, work, and after. All of the semiconductors are made by atomic layer deposition. They're made by layering atoms over each other. There are 4 layers of atoms. This deep level of learning is not just for you. On the industry level, it should be understood as well, because the resources are there. As my colleagues mentioned, industry is working on everyday problem, and because they solve it, it creates profit, and then the circle goes on and on. But it cannot work without the university's help. And this is where our teachers and professors shouldn't just teach theories. You should always work on new inventions. And in that level, you suddenly can reach the progress you need. Let me explain it with a story, just like how Sadi does. I will make an example based on my own experience. I'm a boomer. When I a teenager, a book named 2001 was out. If you haven't read it, go read it. There's a movie too, you can watch it, it's faster. That was the first time we saw a computer that could talk in human language. Secondly, it could make complicated decisions. And thirdly, it could control many other systems at the same time. At a time, it was 1970s, and it was predicted that it would be made in 2001. Have you ever wondered why it never happened then, but in 2025 it happened? The reason for this, that fiction became reality in such a time, I'll tell you. In the last 36 years that I was in this industry, I realized that in the year 2008, there was a revolution that changed the industry forever. When they started thinking out of the box in all the 3 levels that I mentioned, the students, the university, and the industry. Sometimes the questions and answers are not in the box. You have to think outside of it. The reason HAL 9000 was made this day was because they realized the chips that they were making were 2-dimensional. Just like making a city with buildings with 30 or 40 floors. And the chips with their transistors were made just like this. But if you want to move from the 30th level to the other building beside you, you have to go down to the 0 level and then go 30 more up. They left this 2-dimensional thinking and began making NVIDIA chips or A100 chips, ChatGPT, all of them were made based on this model. Don't think of life as to just get a job and continue doing that for the rest of your life. Anything you think of, AI can do better than you. An AI chip, the AI 100 chip has 54 billion transistors. Each of them are a little decision maker, and our brain cannot compete with that. What you need to do is to think out of the box and think what you can do that AI can't. On the university level, this should be the priority of education. We need to teach how to solve a problem with creative ways. Industry uses this kind of teaching, and the professors need to understand that the students need to learn how to solve issues on this level. This was my opinion based on my experience. Mr. Muallim, I'm not sure if everyone understood where you specialized at. From all of your life's work experiences, especially when you were working as a tech manager and a professor in abroad, how does that work there? Thank you. It's a very good question, because this is a lived experience, and experiencing it again won't help us. Over there, industry supports university. It's not an onlooker. It's not a competition. When the machines and systems get obsolete every 2 years or 3 years, this machines always get sent to universities, and it doesn't even come alone. The activators and the needed knowledge to make it work comes with it as well, so that the student works on it and experiences this machine, and it's a leveled knowledge from the 0 level to the uppermost. In our university, it's pretty easy to write a few papers and you get your name out there. But over there, it might take 10 years to get a paper published, because the industry needs to make money of it, so it's never instantly working. But what's important is that they don't just write papers, they try to solve an issue. I think the industry and university should support each other. Mr. Muallim, the last 2 days that I was with you, we had meeting with a few teams of sensor production and computer chips production. Based on the data that I've collected, you have lived through the history of this industry, from companies in Taiwan and others that you mentioned with me. Can you tell me, are we as a country are on the right path right now? Can we hope to progress in the next 5 or 10 years from now, based on your experience? Thank you. Well, It's not up to me to decide, but I'm very impressed with what I'm seeing here today. I'm watching over a lot of projects in Innotex and other areas. I'm seeing a new revolution, and I hope that it will be continued. This reminds me of my own experience. When I came out of Berkeley's university, and I was quite happy with my status then. But they told me, we want to make history and update the industry and change the future forever. And there it happened. Another example is Korea. When it entered the semiconductors industry, it spent $20 billion then, and for the next 20 years it didn't spend even $1. When it was working on Samsung, it sold the memory chips $5 and the production cost was $11. And they told me, we can't believe that you can change our income. But they had foreseen the future. What they believed was that they can one day take over the world with it. Look at how they have progressed in the displays of cell phones and how Samsung has progressed since then. The patience and efforts needs to keep going. It's not like opening a bakery that you'd get profit in 3 months. This is a long-term plan that can take our country to another level. Well, thank you. I always say that if we were granted a knowledge, it's from God, and the potential was put in us by Him. And if we can reach this high-tech level, it would be His will. This last few days I've understood how much this industry is vast, and I'm very honored to know you, Mr. Muallim. And I'm sure everyone from the audience will be using your live experience for good, because when you read things in books or other panels in this exhibition, when someone lived through an history, it's quite different from just reading it somewhere. And I always say the differences between us and the world is just in details. One of them is, if we want to go down this path, we need to invest and have a long plan for the future ahead. As for our other three speakers, I thank you all for your presence and your useful inputs. Please give us a short summary, less than 1 minute. I would like to have a heart-to-heart with you as my final words to you. To you, students of this country, you are the working force of this country. You are the wealth of this country, because I think human resources are a wealth to be treasured, and they're not just laborers, they're analysts, leaders. All of this depends on you and your knowledge. Update yourselves every day and stay and help us build this country. Thank you. It was a very good point, but the issue is they need motivation. How can they raise that? Well, I love the Gen Z. In the university, you were the ones who taught me how to be strong. So you need to stay because we need you. Well, you have any... Mr. Bagheri, give us your last words. We didn't specifically talk about your project, but your experience in this area and the impact of AI on this industry. Can we bring it into this industry? And how many challenges does it have to bring AI into our industry? Because developing technology brings a lot of added value. And this sentence is very important. The question is, in AI and industry topic, how much can we rely on it? Let me start with saying that this project is already in process and the basics are at our command. From knowledge to experience and software and hardware, all of this potential already exists in the country. And I've already started working on 3 companies and 2 institutions. And I've started working on it from finding the right intern to creating the experts we need to add to the human resources of each institution. If we want to accept interns that are semi-experienced to fully experienced human resources, we can use these models to help us along the way. Lastly, what do you think in your project, the level of our students compared to the rest of the world? In different fields, there's different levels. If I want to make an example, in IT and AI, our level is semi-high, well, based on the current fast-paced advancement of technology. This is natural. But what happens is that when people do get experiences and become professionals, they apply and leave the country. And what happens is that when we lose these human resources, we lose a lot of resources as well. So we're progressing. Yes, definitely. Give a round of applause for yourselves. Well, Mr. Sadegzadeh, what do you think the industry and university can do to work together. One of the aspects is culture. How can we handle the complex relations between these two important levels? How can we mend this rift? As for university and industry, what I can say is that what we're doing is a very traditional and old school kind of process that can not even work well by the standards of very, very basic kind of industry, like making shuffles. And we're not even doing that. We're exporting the shuffles from China. So even if the model was correct and we didn't work well with it, it doesn't work with high-tech and AI and semiconductors. What is the truth is that this industry is completely different from the rest of the industries. I had a friend 10 years ago that wanted to copy from a famous company in China, and the purpose of his visit to this company was copy the line of industry. And after the tour was over, they told me that in the time of your tour, we made 2 years worth of production for your country's needs. We aren't really prepared to enter this industry in a way to just copy and cheat all the way. Or backward engineering. Using AI is a two-sided kind of process. One of it is assistant, and it's very well known. And another level is fundamental level, and it was totally kept quiet. Search this on your phones as you're sitting there. I'm going to give you some info and you can look it up. President Obama mentioned it on the Congress on 2011, materials genome, and $5 billion budget was given to that project. At 2016, China started. At Japan, it was started in 2021, and we started in 2023. What it does is that you can basically create an alloy by the help of AI, and it will have any properties that you want. IT has reviewed a new alloy it created. It was that is lighter than aluminum and stronger than steel. If anyone told me this would happen 10 years ago, we would have laughed at him. But what's going on right now, it's real. The keyword was materials genome. Now you can go search it. What I believe is that one of the tools that can help countries like ours to get ahead in the path is tools like materials genome. It's a new science in the alongside AI, we can put this in our plan for ahead. And I think when we have potentials like this, human resources would have different future as well. So Muallim, one last word. I have one sentence to tell you. Look at everyone present on this stage. No one is wearing a party shoe. They're wearing sports shoe. They want to run, and you have to be like us. And it's not just one person. All of us, we need to have faith in ourselves. Give a round of applause for yourselves.